As like we grew up, I saw the more darker side of him and the alcohol take over, where like I started losing this.
Since 2016, the number of children and youth reporting family violence in Canada has gone up by a third. Frontline experts say in reality, that number is much higher. In the second day of our series, Behind Closed Doors on the Epidemic of Family Violence, a warning that the details here may be disturbing to some. A daughter desperate to break the cycle for her abusive father didn't know where to turn for help.
If I knew he was drinking, I just didn't want to be there, and home wasn't a safe space.
While your average 16-year-old would be planning life after high school, for Maya, whose identity we are protecting, watching her father abuse her mother became a scary norm.
There was an instant where I did see him like grab my mom by like her hair and push her down onto the bed, and then like did it in front of me and like almost like to show me that like he was superior in that moment.
Seeing firsthand how an addiction to alcohol changed her father.
In my eyes, I never really saw him as my father. I just saw him as a really angry man for a very like long time in my childhood.
According to 2019 police data, more than 22,000 children and youth experienced family violence in Canada, a significant increase from 19,000 reported the previous year. And the numbers have only been rising. 3 in 5 of those reported cases involved young girls. And these are only instances reported to police, representing a fraction of the problem. Maya wanted to report her father once she was old enough.
Never once did I really feel guilt about calling or like reaching out, because I knew it was right. Like I knew what he was doing to my mom was bad, and like I think he understood it too. Like what he did was wrong, but like he still continued to drink because that was his way of coping with like pain.
In violent households, kids are in very different positions. In some cases, they could get Children's Aid Society involved if the abuse is reported. However, for older kids 15 and over, like Maya at the time, that's no longer an option, according to one expert.
They're not young enough to get help from the CAS or Child Protection Authority, but they're also not the direct victim of the abuse.
Pamela Cross, legal director for Luke's Place, adds that it's usually victims who report to police, adding that officers have a duty to charge if they see evidence of family violence.
The challenge is that so much violence that happens within families isn't physical. A lot of it is emotional, psychological, verbal. There are no criminal charges for that kind of abuse. And so it can be difficult.
But if the victim isn't pursuing charges, it can be difficult for police to take action. Luke's Place, which takes a holistic approach to working with women who have experienced violence, also addresses systemic issues they face. A major obstacle being not everyone understands their rights.
When I started practicing law, which was quite a while ago now, I assumed that family law and family court would be a haven for women leaving abusive relationships. And I very quickly learned that it wasn't in many ways.
Ahead on City News, what happened when Maya called for help, plus the systemic blind spots that may deter victims and survivors from reporting and navigating the court system. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. If a parent or sibling in your house is being violent against you, call any of the numbers on your screen when it's safe, or visit us at citynews.ca for a full list of resources. The scary reality is that victims of family violence are at the greatest danger when they decide to leave. Yet advocates will tell you the system that's supposed to protect them can also work against them. On the second day of Behind Closed Doors, a series with our colleagues at OmniNews, a warning these stories may be disturbing to some viewers. It's the case of a young woman living with an abusive father, unable to break the cycle.
I didn't see him like as this monster for a very long time.
The man Maya is talking about is her father,
Honestly, I had love towards him.
who for years she watched abuse her mother.
You don't know when the last time is really going to be the last time until like time has passed and he's truly shown it. But like, what if like it's not the last time and he picks things back up and someone really gets hurt?
Police were called on a number of occasions.
I just remember being in my room with like the police still in my house talking to child services, but that's the only interaction I had with them. It was never a follow-up, it was never like anything else.
That hope that her family was going to get help quickly diminished.
If they did more to check up on us, that would be great. But at the time, it was like, I almost felt like child services was distracting me from my dad being like handcuffed and put into the back of a car.
Her mother faced pressures from relatives to stay with her abusive father. There was a stigma of being a single mother. And though she was the primary breadwinner, she didn't have supports to raise her kids on her own.
To take that step, that first step out of that relationship is terrifying.
There are systems in place to help victims of abuse flee, but experts say there are huge barriers.
The lack of adequate legal aid to ensure that even women who don't have money to pay for a lawyer can get a lawyer is huge. That's just such an enormous barrier for women.
According to the legal director of Luke's Place, the vast majority of Canadian women represent themselves in family court, a huge problem.
It would be like you or me trying to take out our own appendix while somebody was also standing there screaming at us that we weren't doing it right.
And on top of that, Cross says it's a seemingly endless process that can take years, during which many women continue to face violence.
They're not wrong. They're thinking, well, at least when I stay with him, I'm familiar with the pattern of his abuse. It's terrible, but I kind of know how to work around it a little bit.
And while the victim waits for the court process,
if she has trouble getting some quick orders from the court, a restraining order, for example, to keep the abuser away from her, an order that says the children can remain in her care, she's very vulnerable.
a step towards addressing some systemic barriers this month, Cross notes that both the Divorce Act and Ontario's Children's Law Reform Act saw significant revisions, adding important identifiers of family violence, a vital element judges have to consider for the best interest of a child in making parenting arrangements. That means watching for signs of coercive control, psychological or financial abuse, or threats to harm animals.
This is a huge, huge step forward.
Pamela Cross adds that lawyers and judges need better education. These professionals must understand the realities of the violence that victims live with in order to craft the best possible legal outcomes. In Toronto, I'm Faiza Amin for City News. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. If a parent or sibling in your house is being violent against you, call any of the numbers on your screen when it's safe, or visit us at citynews.ca for a full list of resources.